very much for what you're doing. Excellent work. Right, councillors, approval and recommendation of the annual report, which I'm sure everyone has read from cover to cover. Actually, it's quite interesting. It's quite good. It's even positive, Kevin. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Have a small presentation just to run through, and then we can take some questions at the end of that if there are some. Just as a little reminder, this is the annual report for the entire group. It covers that financial year 1 July 14 to 30th of June 2015. And ultimately this is our reporting back mechanism to our communities to talk about how we've actually performed against those expectations that were set through that public consultative process of an annual plan, be it during an annual LTP or on its own. The other thing worth mentioning here though is also that the individual performance of the entities making up the group obviously have come through various committees in the past. So the CCOs have all reported through on a quarterly basis, including June, and the parent has also reported through on this performance. So this document is really just putting all of that together into a statutory format and issuing that for the public. There are 3 steps as far as governance structure to this process. We have been to the Audit and Risk Committee, that was on Tuesday, and that was really a review of the process and any of the audit findings. And so the Audit and Risk Committee did support adoption of this document. So what we're really seeking today is for this committee to support the document as far as an indication of the performance of the entity, being the entire group, and then ultimately looking at next Thursday recommendation going from those two, this committee and the Audit and Risk Committee, to the governing body for formal adoption of the document. Look, the year, it's worth starting with the point of all about growth, and growth are the drivers of most of the influence that impacted on the annual report itself. So population it has grown by $132,000 over the last 5 years, a substantial portion. People, sorry. People are just dollars, yes. And look, so obviously to support that level of growth, what it does need is significant investment in infrastructure, but also increasing demands for services. And we'll see that in a couple of slides, just around the sheer quantity of consenting that's arisen and other factors. And also it's worth mentioning there were significant one-off initiatives that occurred during that 14-15 financial year. Indications of the growth, well, public transport patronage, up 10%, so a total of 79 million trips. That's 5 million more than we were forecasting for the year. Rail patronage alone within that has grown by 22%, significant increases there. As far as the indicators of development goes, we've got resource consent applications up 5.5%, building consent 6%, and then the underlying inspections of buildings up 5%. All substantial growth figures. Other factors, it was the first full year of the hop card operation, and 67% of all of the public passenger trips are now utilising that hop card. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier on, one-off events, there's 2 significant ones there, the 2015 ICC Cricket World Cup, as well as the FIFA Under-20s World Cup. And then in addition, there's also preparation for the 2017 Masters Games. So some significant work going into large events to occur in the Auckland area. On the financial highlights, as all the growth has driven that city investment, the consenting, the growth and the services, that's led to both expenditure and income both being up compared to budget. Netting those off to look at what the operational performance looked like, the operational surplus before gains and losses was $80 million surplus. So a positive result. We were anticipating a bit of a deficit, so that's been turned around for the financial year. Within that inherently were the efficiency targets, which are building up each year since we came to existence, and that was now $183 million per annum for the 14-15 year, so that has now been achieved. As we have mentioned in previous years, there are always accounting adjustments that also reflect beyond the underlying operational performance, and in the end it was 800 million or close to 900 million actually of adjustments, all positive this time. We had some losses in some cases from the derivatives we mentioned before, but there's also large, massive increases in property valuation, stormwater and other factors. In summation, look, from the financial perspective, the capital expenditure, approximately $1.5 billion against a budget of $1.7 billion. Asset values, by that capital expenditure drive, vested assets and the valuation exercise, we've now got an asset value of $42.2 billion. And gross debt levels, 7.3 billion, which is below forecast. We were anticipating about 7.5 at the 30th of June. So some good positive financial results, coping well with the growth in the region. I won't go through all of these, just for your information though. These are some of the more significant infrastructure projects, or in effect some of them are programs that occurred during the financial year. And in those alone, you're seeing over $1 billion worth of work out of the 1.5 billion of investment that was undertaken. Resourcing changes, obviously that push for investment to meet the demands and the population growth requires resourcing to be looked at as to how we actually deliver those services. So total staff, full-time equivalents, so converting to on a full-time basis, 9,678. So that is up 208 on last year. And our total staff costs, $792 million across the entire group, remember. And that is up $63 million on last year. Interestingly, they're looking at where we do stand right now. If you're looking at the full-time equivalent count, since we came into existence, our population is up by around about 10%, but the FTEs, full-time equivalent staff, are down by about 3% compared to pre-amalgamation. About 276 staff down compared to like-for-like basis as well as we can. Look, all of that is, the resourcing drive is primarily a direct consequence of that growth, what's been occurring, both in just literally activity levels and the demands for services. And Council continues to constantly examine how we do resource those services, what's the best, most cost-effective and best for the customer. An interesting little indicator, if you do look at our cash flow, is their operational cash flow. So this is physically the amount we're paying either staff or suppliers, so either providing the service in-house or providing it through external suppliers. The total cash paid to them was within 0.5%. So we spent about $2.2 billion and within a few $1 million, $10 million or so of that number. Examples of where that FTE count has come up over the last year, that 208 mentioned. Look, 42 were in the building the resource consenting area. So literally the scale of operation has grown with the growth in the region, the development occurring. So 42 extra FTEs were brought on board, around about a $3 million bill incurred there. Now, building resource consents, a substantial portion of that is then recovered through consenting fees. The Housing Project Office, as you're aware, has gained massive momentum, building a lot of strategic housing areas. 9 FTE equivalents were brought in for that team. Auckland Transport, a large proportion, 116 FTEs in there, literally to deliver that massive program they had of works, investing, maintaining, operating their systems.
How many was that?
116 FTEs. Watercare also had about 58 FTEs. It's a bit hard to quantify exactly how much that is, because that was a bit of a shuffle between repairs and maintenance versus internal. Some of their lab staff were brought in-house, but also their program for the maintenance service team was the largest proportion of those extra FTEs. Some of the one-offs, I mean, the LTP engagement, record number of submissions coming in, required a lot of support, as well as supporting the independent hearings panel for the unitary plan. Major events during that financial year, which required around about $2.3 million of extra resourcing to support those. And one little example there is animal management has been brought in-house, as you probably be aware. So that actually resulted in close to $1 million saving, because what we've done is stopped paying outside parties to deliver those services, and we're paying an extra 48 FTEs to deliver that service instead. Much more cost-effective model. Debt is always of interest. Look now, and our debt interest costs remain within our prudential limits. We have those set through Treasury policy, and we are within all of those. Supported by a large income stream, $3.6 billion of income now coming into the organisation to support those interest repayments on that debt, and obviously backed up by $42 billion worth of assets. And most important indicator probably is that external one, which is both Standard & Poor's and Moody's have maintained their high credit ratings, some of the highest you'll get in New Zealand. So, in a summary, delivered extensive investment in the city, $1.5 billion of works undertaken. Achieved the saving target within those results, $183 million now per annum, and that will continue to grow. Overall resourcing levels are in line with budget. Staff are up, external resourcing down. We achieved that. And ultimately a strong group financial performance. anticipating a small deficit, but we actually end up achieving an $80 million surplus across the group. So all of that looks favourable, and that actually sets a very solid foundation for that next 10-year plan that we have just adopted. So a reasonably short slide on obviously what is a very large set of activities.
Thank you, Kevin. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. This is all really great. My question is around how we communicate this to the public at large. I would suggest there's a way of communicating information using pictures that are very easy to understand. And one of the real messages that we need to get across is that this big increase in FTEs, the number of people that we're employing, and the increase in our staff is very much because we're doing more business, and we actually recover on that. So if we could have something that shows the increase in dollar terms, the increase in staff terms, and the relationship between that and the recovery that we're getting, so that people understand that it's not increasing their rates, that in fact we may be making efficiency gains in that area, and that we show that pictorially so they can see it, it would be much easier for us to get the message across.
Okay, look, through the chair, if I can, there's a couple of quick comments. One is, the summary annual report. So there's the 3 large volumes, but the summary annual report's got a lot of pictorial information, including some of the infographics and things which cover that. The simplest way, though, is the rates are set at the start of the year, and we actually achieved an $80 million surplus. So the rates that were set achieved all that had to happen, despite the massive area of growth that occurred, the increasing services, the investment in the city. It was all achieved within rates.
Yep. I understand that. Having said that, the difficulty I have is that when I try and explain something to someone and I start throwing numbers around and words, they don't get it. But you can actually demonstrate it very easily with pictures, very simply. So that's one question.
Yep.
The other question is around the capital projects listing, and particularly the stadium upgrades and renewals. I have a concern, and I think that's been expressed by other councils around the spending on the stadium strategy. My understanding is that that's on hold at this point, but I still see a number of numbers in here. So I just put a question mark around whether we're not going to spend some of this money, certainly until we know that there's a need for it.
That's not his thing to do, is it, at the moment?
You know.
And I'm talking about spending on
Councillor Walker, is
Mount
that in the
Smart,
budget update?
QBE, Western Springs.
I thought it was.
Which item are you actually referring to there? Is that the actual budget update?
That's the budget update.
So future focus rather than
Capital
last year's?
projects listing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So well, that's actually looking forward. There'll be some discussion on that item coming up, rather than looking to the 14-15 financial year. Cool. Yep.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor and I.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up from that, we've all read in the paper recently the comments by Councillor Brewer about the extra staff and high costs. This tells a completely different story. And I think it's extremely important that this message be put out, as Wayne has just said, in very simple communication to the public to come on the journey with us, because we are making progress on behalf of this. Right now they're confused because the media is telling them something completely different. And this is our opportunity with this type of information to clear the picture out there and get the people on side to understand that we are making some savings and we are moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Casey.
2 questions.